The room fell into a suffocating quiet as the lawyer read my name, as though the breath had been sucked out. As my brother Lucas grinned like a person who had just won a lot of money, I could feel dozens of pitying eyes shift toward me. At that point, all of my remaining doubts disappeared. My parents had really decided to punish me from the afterlife one last time. Mr. Cunningham said clumsily, "Julia Evans. You were abandoned by your parents." The autumn dusk painting. My heart tightened. Was that all there was? The oppressive calm that pervaded the gloomy wood-paneled legal office was broken by Lucas's icy laugh. His eyes pierced the already damaged center of my pride like needles. An inexpensive attic painting? Julia, you deserve it. It wonderfully captures your value. I tried to control the blood rushing through my veins by clenching my fists. Even though we were both adults now, Lucas had never missed an opportunity to bring me down. Lucas just turned 35, and I'm 28. Mr. Cunningham went on in a monotone, going into excruciating detail about every item my parents left Lucas. 70% of Evans Corporation shares, the penthouse in New York, the big mansion in Connecticut, and innumerable equities dispersed across firms that I had only ever heard of in financial newspapers. As Lucas listened to the list of his loot, he sat calmly, like a young monarch. He gave me a smile, but there was something icy in his eyes. You know how it works, Julia, so stop staring at me that way. Capable people are deserving of it. Ability. I scoffed. My eyes ached and my voice wavered with rage, but I wouldn't let Lucas see me cry. You mean acting like we're sucking up to our parents, treading on other people, and trying to be capable? Silence returned to the room, colder than before. After giving me a pitying but uneasy glance, Mr. Cunningham gave me a piece of paper and added softly, "Miss Julia, your parents asked that you pick up the picture in 5 days." Lucas crossed his knees, sat back in his chair, and tucked his pricey shirt collar into place. "A treasure like that shouldn't disappear, so I think you'd best be on time." He was making fun of me. Lucas had triumphed once more. In the eyes of our parents, who were so consumed by wealth and power that my presence hardly mattered, he had always been favored, the golden child. I had always thought that no one could harm me again, at least after they died. However, I was mistaken. Without saying another word, I walked out of the legal office. Behind me, Lucas yelled in a voice brimming with ruthless cynicism. "If you don't like the artwork, Julia, you could sell it for a few $dozen." I hurried out. The chilly November breeze felt like the world was making fun of me. My thoughts were racing with the hurt of this last rejection as I drove back to my small apartment on the outskirts of the city. A artwork of no value. Lucas might have been correct. Perhaps my parents had always appreciated me in just that way. I collapsed on the chilly floor at home, feeling empty and lost. Though Lucas and my parents saw it as meaningless, I had always made an effort to live up to my love of art. Something that didn't bring wealth or prestige. Perhaps they had seen my entire life as a horrible joke, and that painting was the ideal time to wrap it up. My phone rang. The screen glowed with Lucas's name. After hesitating, I hung up the phone. I was aware that all he wanted to do was add insult to injury, boast, or act as though he still cared about us like a brother or sister. No. I didn't require that phony sympathy. I needed an explanation. Why was I so hated by my parents? And why did they leave me the one item no one cared about in their last moments, out of the millions of possessions they had? Deciding I had to get the painting back, I got up. I needed to physically handle my fortune, if nothing else. Regardless of how useless it was. However, I had no clue at the time that the fall dusk would soon draw me into a dark secret that my parents had kept hidden for their whole lives. Lucas believed he had a secret that could shatter the dazzling world. The next afternoon I reached the ancient Connecticut estate. Lucas now owned the house, but he didn't bother to come, presumably because he didn't believe I was worth his time. Our long-standing housekeeper, Mrs. Teresa, was the one who opened the door. With burning eyes and a trembling voice, she took hold of my hand. "This is really unjust to you, Julia. I forced a faint smile and shook my head, wondering if there was anything I could do. You've done too much already. All I'm doing is collecting. My gift. The autumn dusk artwork was still hanging over the reading room fireplace, where it always was. Every afternoon, my mother would withdraw to this chamber, drink Earl Grey tea, and gaze at it as if she were listening to whispers that were concealed in every brushstroke. It depicted a deep forest at dark, with odd forms embedded in the trees and orange-red light filtered through the foliage. I had never noticed triangles, hexagons, or circles before, but now I do. It was hard to turn away from the painting for some reason. I extended my hand and lightly touched the dark timber frame, which was as cold as wintertime metal. Teresa suddenly said in a harsh voice behind me. Your mom used to gaze at it for hours on end. She began mumbling numbers in her latter months. Lengthy numerical sequences. She continued to sketch similar designs on napkins, her sleeves, and even the mirror in the bathroom. I looked over at her. Didn't they all assume she was ill? She gave a nod. Your dad was mad. Claimed to be losing her composure. However, I didn't think so. She must have known something. Teresa was requested to assist me in gently wrapping the painting. Just before I left, she whispered. Take care of Lucas. He doesn't now know anything, but he won't stop if he does. I hung the picture on the wall of my little Brooklyn apartment's living room that evening. With the exception of a desk lamp that gave the painting a gentle golden glow, I switched off all the lights. There was a strange feeling. Those forms. They weren't motionless. I breathed quickly and blinked a few times. No, it must have been the lights, or perhaps I was simply too exhausted. However, the more I examined, the more certain I got. The arrangement of the shapes seemed strange. A language? A code? I photographed the painting and used my computer to enlarge the details. The interlaced circles, the light brown triangles. They appeared too methodical to be merely abstract paintings. As I flipped through old books and papers from my art history studies, I came to a halt at a single word. Steganography. The method of concealing messages inside pictures. At that moment, my phone began to buzz. Lucas. After a brief moment of hesitation, I hung up the phone. A text message showed up less than 5 minutes later. Julia gives the painting back. If you do it tonight without any questions, I'll give you $5 million. I went cold. My heart pounded. $5 million. For an artwork he'd once made fun of. I glanced at the painting first, then back to the words. A shiver went through my body. Lucas never took action unless it was advantageous to him. There must be something really significant about the painting if he was prepared to spend that much money. Furthermore, it had more than just aesthetic value. I heard an urgent knock at the door close to midnight. I caught a glimpse of Lucas. His hair was in disarray, his shirt was wrinkled, and he had a terrified expression on his face that I had never seen before. He knocked more forcefully. Julia answered the door and said, "You don't realize that painting isn't yours, Mom left instructions about it." With my heart racing, I remained silent. Lucas's voice remained cold even as he lowered it. "It's linked to the entire Evans Corporation, so you have no idea what you're holding. Let it go, and I'll keep you safe." Defend me? I was under threat from him. After taking a step back and removing the artwork from the wall, I hurried inside my bedroom and secured the door. I didn't care that Lucas's banging could be heard in the living room. I had to know what my mother had left behind, exactly. I flipped the artwork over and found a little opening in the wooden frame's lower border. I used a little knife to pry it open. And out came a beautifully folded piece of paper. With shaking hands, I unfurled it. The penmanship was delicate and slanted. It belonged to my mom. If you're reading this, Julia, you've begun to realize what your brother and father have always attempted to conceal. Don't put your trust in them. The only one I trust is you. Coordinates are represented by the forms. Access codes are represented by the colors. Observe the path. And use caution, since after you discover the truth, they will stop at nothing to prevent you from telling them. Infinite lines of numbers lay below. Codes, coordinates, and other stuff I wasn't yet able to comprehend. But I was certain of one thing. My mother had been training for this game for years, and I had entered it. And I wouldn't give up this time. I was awake the entire night. The autumn dusk artwork was illuminated by the desk lamp's faint glow, which caused the geometric figures to appear to be breathing. My mother left the paper on the table. A brief, razor-sharp cipher that sliced through all of my preconceived notions about my family. I started making connections. The deep blue circles resembled signs used in traditional encryption, while the red triangles led to symbols that resembled geocodes. In accordance with the arrangement my mother recommended in her note, I overlaid the forms in specialized graphic software. As though guiding me step by step into a chasm beneath my feet, each layer gained depth. At last, a series of digits emerged. ERD 698, 42nd. 963,033. Every year on April 23, stop us. A coordinate. I promptly entered it onto Google Maps. About 3 hours' drive from my home, it was a barren forest close to the Massachusetts border. It came with an odd string of about 40 characters, scrawled beneath a little line of my mother's words. Code for the bunker. Observe the red, blue, and yellow hues. Underneath the split ancient maple tree sits the entryway. My doubts were gone. A map that my mother had left behind. Not to be treasured. But there was a reality that someone in this family was prepared to bury for millions of dollars. I left as soon as the sun came up. Although the highway was deserted, I could see a black SUV in the rearview mirror, keeping a safe distance to escape suspicion. I veered through leafless trees and abruptly turned onto a dirt lane that led to the forest's edge. I then turned back onto a side road. The SUV was gone when I got back on the highway. When I got there, it was getting dark. An abandoned wooden cabin with a moss-covered roof and broken windows stood close to the barren terrain. I waded through dense grass as instructed, mud sticking to my knees. It was just as stated until I spotted the old maple tree. Its trunk was as big as a human arm. It broke in two, like if lightning had struck it. Buried beneath the detritus and dry leaves at the foot of the tree was an old iron hatch. After I removed it, I discovered a tiny number keypad wedged into a crevice. I gambled and typed in the color code that my mother had left. BP. A faint click was heard. A spiral staircase leading down into darkness was visible as the iron door swung open. My heart was racing. My back was covered with cold sweat. However, I was aware that I couldn't go back. Not after coming this far. Like the ticking of a clock, every footfall reverberated beneath the surface. With each step I took, motion sensor lights flickered on in the long concrete hallway at the bottom. A heavy metal door stood at the end of the hallway. There is a touch screen next to it that requests an access code. I typed the last few characters from my mom's letter. The door opened as the green light came on. I froze as well. A state-of-the-art, more than 2,000 square foot laboratory was before me. Like a military research center, it features high ceilings, immaculate white walls, rows of shining stainless steel tables, and sophisticated equipment arranged in a line. But it wasn't the technology that astounded me. Dozens of designs, patents, and prototypes were displayed on the glass wall at the far end. Charlotte Evans, all signed. Mom. I had never heard of her name as an inventor in my entire life. After leaving management of Evans Corporation in 1998, she was solely identified in the company's records as a nominal co-founder. Lucas and my father received all the accolades and honors. However, I now witnessed the reality firsthand. She had been the empire's lifeblood. I approached the files and looked at each title. Renewable Energy Technology, Level 4 of Project Phoenix. The 2003 Rapid Bioreactor Module. A protocol for image recognition based on neural networks. 2010's Metamorphic Protocol. My knees buckled. Every text message seemed like a hand choking my throat or a smack in the face. I discovered another handwritten note among the designs, carefully wrapped inside an envelope with the words, "To Julia," inscribed on it. When you're prepared. My darling. You've seen what I've been hiding for years if you're reading this. Lucas and your father didn't simply tell lies. They pilfered my work as well as the work of numerous other inventors with whom I worked. Evans Corporation isn't the empire that your dad established. It was constructed using stolen concepts. You were always unique, you noticed things that others missed. You are the last hope to reveal the truth because of this. But Julia, watch out, people will kill to defend a lie when the truth is under danger. I was holding a letter tightly. An angry surge crashed into my chest like a tidal wave. Not because someone had deceived me. However, I knew. My father and Lucas had done more than simply steal. An entire generation of brilliant people had been buried. Merely to maintain their vacuous spotlight. And I would be the one to unearth every inch of dirt they attempted to bury. Julia Evans, the abandoned kid, the heir of a useless picture. A faint sound reverberated in my ear. A warning? Or was there another person with me in the lab? Still holding onto my mother's letter, I whirled around, prepared to confront whatever ghost from the past was lurking in the shadows. I jumped when I heard glass smashing. The lights in the lab flickered wildly. My heart was pounding when I turned around and saw Lucas. Wet. Untidy hair. Bloodshot eyes. Anger twisted his face. How did you enter this place? I took a step back and gripped the letter on the table tightly. Did you honestly believe you were the only person with the intelligence to figure out the painting's meaning? He scoffed. Dad didn't keep anything from me, and Mom didn't keep anything from Dad. My back struck the chilly control panel as I retreated another step. Were you following me? Yes, ever since you turned down the $5 million. I realized then that you had discovered something Mom had left behind. And I refused to allow you to ruin the 30 years of work that Dad and I have put into it. Nothing was built by you. Everything our mother toiled for was taken by you. I didn't back down even when my voice cracked. You are aware of it. Lucas took a step forward, sending a loud stomping sound across the room on the concrete floor. She was a deluded woman who constantly believed that everything was against her. I gestured at the rows of patterns that were suspended below the glass. What about the several patents she holds, the projects that Evans Corporation utilized to construct its whole infrastructure? Tell me it's not a coincidence, please. Lucas's face went white. His eyes briefly flashed with alarm, but cruelty swiftly took its place. Now, please provide me the original code. With a chilly smile, I said. No way. He reached inside his coat pocket and took out a little thing. When I realized it, I froze. Less than an hour before, I had backed up the source code on the drive. Julia, Mom left a lot behind, but she was unaware that she had brought up a predictable daughter. Did you truly believe your backpack's hard drive was secure? He raised it and gave it a little shake. Like stealing a baby's sweets. I tightened my jaw, then regained my composure. It's just a copy of that code. I turned on the failsafe procedure. It's all rubbish without the main code. Before the entire room burst, the rage in Lucas's eyes flashed like the final spark. I was quicker than him when he lunged. I kicked the emergency switch I had previously found on the control panel behind me. He was locked inside the main lab as the steel door slammed shut. With his fists hammering against the bulletproof glass, Lucas let out a howl. Julia, you have no idea what you're doing, open it. Through the intercom slot, I spoke. No. I am performing it with precision for the first time in my life. I swiftly left by taking the key from the control board and going through the emergency escape tunnel, which my mother had indicated with a spooky message in her letter. Follow this route and don't turn around if you are found. Winding mountain roads and dense fog smothered any remaining light as I drove into the night. The USB containing the original access code was still in my backpack. A key that might reveal everything: the heist, the falsified records, the money trail. It was about 5 in the morning by the time I returned to Brooklyn. I didn't visit my flat. I was aware that it was unsafe now. Rather, I made my way to Margaret's former apartment, the devoted maid, the only person who ever stuck by my mother and me. I knocked 3 times, and the door opened. She was wearing a robe over her shoulders, and when she spotted me, her eyes widened. "Julia? You appear to have just escaped hell, my dear. I'm in need of somewhere to spend the night. As well as a computer connected to a private network." She took me into the living room without saying another word. After 10 minutes, I had entered my mother's access codes into the system and began forwarding the first set of documents to the 3 locations she had specified. Securities and Exchange Commission of the United States. SEC. Financial crime investigations are the focus of 3 major media outlets as well as a nonprofit. Now I couldn't stop. I was shocked when I heard the phone ringing. The number was unidentified. After a few seconds of hesitation, I lifted it up. A well-known male voice, as sharp as a sword, emerged. "Julia, quit while you can, you're toying with fire." I let out a sigh and hung up silently. I knew who it was without having to be told. After all these years, my father's voice remained the same. Strong, frigid, and dangerous. Now, though, he had lost all authority. They were scared of me for the first time. I returned my attention to the computer screen and observed the progress of the upload bar. 72%, 84%, and 91%. The world would know who actually founded Evans Corporation in a few more hours. Who stole everything, too. I felt like I could finally breathe once the last documents were properly uploaded, and I mailed 3 backup copies to the addresses my mother had provided in her letter. However, that calm was short-lived. 2 hours. 7:13 a.m. Margaret's apartment doorbell rang. My mother was the only one who ever utilized the 3 brief chimes as a signal. With my heart in my throat, I peered through the peephole. A tall, thin man in a charcoal overcoat stood there with his silver hair combed nicely. His countenance. I believed I had permanently buried my father, George Evans, in memory. I was still. After an automobile accident in Colorado 3 years prior, he was pronounced dead. A funeral where the casket is closed. The press's well-crafted condolences and Lucas's crocodile tears. I thought so. All of us did. And now, as though he had just returned from a business trip, he stood at the door, composed. "We need to talk, Julia, so open the door." I remained motionless. Margaret emerged, saw me still, walked to the window adjacent, and stepped back right away, her face white. "Lucas is also out there, so it's not just him. They're aware of your presence." A shiver went down my spine as I took a deep breath. They had obviously never forgotten me. It had all been a game of cat and mouse. It was time for them to reveal who they really were. Instead of opening the door, I activated the security camera that was connected to the remote control and began to film everything. I heard my father's voice clearly. "I am aware that you have accessed the lab, Julia. Charlotte secured all biometric codes to bloodline genetics, so you are the only one with clearance. The last key is you." I hit the intercom button while speaking in a fairly composed tone. Was the artwork and the will merely a performance, then? He did not refute it. Charlotte constantly stated, "You're smart." But she didn't realize how persistent I was. The only thing preventing me from completely legitimizing my authority over Evans Corp is that lab. We cannot allow a few shards of memory to destroy that legacy. I sneered. Legacy? Or a crime cloaked in false glory? Lucas interrupted, his tone piercing. "Julia, you don't comprehend anything. Mom had always been against the business. She posed a danger. Her entire existence was a fantasy. I almost yelled. Illusion. These inventions form the basis of this business, and those patents are genuine. Dad is a licensed thief, as are you. Quiet. Then, like a parent instructing a child, my father spoke once more in a composed manner. Evans Corp cannot afford for the general public to be aware that a woman laboring in the background is responsible for all of its accomplishments. Stakeholders, the media, and investors all require a symbol. A household. A man. Nothing else will be acceptable to them. So I choked. At least in appearance, you decided to kill her. You took her out of history, out of the firm, out of memory. As if it were obvious, my father nodded. Julia, you won't make any changes either. For the quicker player, the media is a battleground. We also have command over all threads. Every investor, every law firm, every major paper. What did you send? It will be buried, twisted, or spun as a jealous daughter's internal plot. Although I was out of breath, I wasn't in a panic. This was what I had anticipated. I started uploading the second USB, which contained the original backup and the recording of this entire conversation, to an OpenSys platform after inserting it into the computer. One that was uncensorable. No one was able to quiet. Lucas banged his hand against the wall outside. Julia, you'll regret this. Your actions are ruining this family. With my eyes focused on the upload progress bar, I responded. Long ago, this family fell apart. All I'm doing is removing the paint to reveal the interior deterioration. Margaret's phone rang abruptly. After responding, she turned to face me in horror. Someone reported you for gaining unlawful access to Evans Corp's intellectual property, and the cops are on their way. They claim that you have an arrest warrant. I got to my feet. Dad's last tactic is to put me in holding so that no one can hear what I have to say. However, I was ahead of the game this time. I knew George and Lucas Evans would have nowhere left to hide after the video went viral and millions of people saw their real faces. I pulled the power plug after staring directly into the camera. This time, Mom prevails over Dad. Taking Margaret's hand, I sprinted out the back door, prepared to take on whatever was ahead. Because the truth was all I had left to lose. Without any hesitation, I opened the secondary control interface of the system my mother had left in the lab as soon as the last USB finished downloading. A framework known as the Clarity Protocol. This was not only a routine security measure, rather, it was my mother's most powerful tool. A counterattack that she had quietly planned for years, ready for this very moment. She would make the truth scream whenever they attempted to suppress it. I typed the last command. The words emerged when the screen flashed. Disseminating data to all media channels and prototyping clarity. SEC, www, and WIPO. It is not possible to cancel WIPO. Interpol. The system started pushing data at breakneck speed a second later. Proof of patent theft. Money laundering accounts of Evans Corp. Confidential agreements with legislators. Confessions taken from internal audio recordings are also included. My mother had kept it all in an encrypted format. Autumn dusk is seen in the picture. The night outside was filled with siren calls, and every window of Margaret's building was illuminated by red and blue police lights. Sharp, authoritative voices resounded, along with the crackle of radios and the thudding of boots on the stairs. I hurried to the rear door, but I didn't run. FBI, do not move, drop any weapons. I was aware that I wasn't the target. I saw my father and Lucas trapped in the corridor, flashlights flashing directly into their faces on the surveillance camera. Shouting, 4 armed agents closed in. George Evans, you are being held on charges of intellectual property theft, federal financial fraud, and obstruction of justice. You are accused of conspiracy, document falsification, and misuse of executive authority, Lucas Evans. Lucas let out a nearly frantic scream. Absolutely not. Julia has nothing, and she has no rights. I tightened my fists and spoke into the screen in a whisper. Lucas, I know the truth. And you can't keep me quiet this time. My dad remained silent. He merely fixed his icy gaze on the camera. The game was done, he knew. He was aware that he had lost control of all he had attempted to conceal and believed he could manage. I raised my hands as directed and left the apartment. After recognizing me, a female agent came over and motioned for her team to stand down. We have the complete data dump from Clarity Protocol, Ms. Julia Evans. I speak for the SEC and the FBI, and witness protection has been turned on. Still in shock that I had just overthrown an empire, I nodded. They will no longer be able to spin this, will they? The agent smiled confidently in response. You followed your mother's wishes exactly, but not with this much proof. There was mayhem for the next 48 hours. I was brought to a safe motel. My phone was constantly buzzing with calls from international groups, lawyers, and the media. Every news outlet was covering it. Evans Corporation founder George Evans was discovered alive. Arrested. After a daughter reveals the truth, a billion-dollar empire falls apart. Evans, Julia. A mute genius's unlikely hero. As the picture Autumn Dusk came into focus, I sat in front of the television with my hands shaking a little. The geometric shapes with layers are now a representation of truth. Featured on the covers of prominent foreign newspapers. Margaret gave a call. You know what, Julia? Your mother used to say that you would be the one to do what she couldn't. And you succeeded today. I remained silent and simply gazed out the window, where the city was still humming, but I felt a strange silence within. I had the impression that my mother was standing nearby. Similar to a warm breath behind my back. I never imagined that I would end up being the person who exposed a family, transformed a corporation, and was dubbed the decade's greatest whistleblower. However, I was certain of one thing. Fame wasn't the reason I did this. For my mother, I did it. For the truth. For those who were silenced as inventors. For me. The formerly invisible daughter. And this was just the start. Evans Corporation, the corporation my father had so meticulously built, fell apart like a sandcastle hit by a roaring tsunami within 3 weeks of the Clarity Protocol being activated. The stock price fell from $314 to less than $18 a share as a result of the huge withdrawal of investors. It was dubbed the biggest moral collapse in American IT history by the press. It was already too late when the board of directors hurried to call an emergency meeting. A complete hold on all assets registered in George and Lucas Evans' names had already been mandated by the federal court. 18 federal allegations, including financial fraud, power abuse, falsifying intellectual property documents, and theft of patented assets, led to my father and Lucas's official detention. Any opportunity they had of making things better had been buried forever by the evidence found in my mother's lab. I was not there at the trial. When a reporter asked me if I regretted putting my own father and brother to prison, I didn't respond. The only time I talked was on national TV. The truth is never inexpensive. Justice, however, is always worthwhile. A month later, I was standing on the top platform of the conference room of the old Evans Corporation headquarters, which is now known as Aurora Innovations. The shiny logo my father used to cover up intellectual theft was gone behind me, replaced by a new one. According to what my mother used to say, the geometric shapes in the picture Autumn Dusk created a blaze of light that broke through the darkness. Where no one looks, true light always shines. I inhaled deeply while observing the quiet throng below. New investors, engineers, designers, and even lawyers who had previously ignored the truth. And said, "This marks a new beginning rather than an end." Stolen dreams served as the foundation for Evans Corp. The foundation of Aurora will be genuine values. In order to compensate the inventors whose work had been stolen and whose reputations had been damaged by my father, I declared the establishment of the Innovation Restitution Fund and committed 40% of Aurora's first-year earnings to this cause. In addition to interest for the years they were forgotten, each would get the entire value of their innovations. Dr. Marla King, the inventor of the medical sensor system that Evans Corporation eventually employed in hundreds of millions of dollars worth of products, was among the first individuals I called. When I informed her that her patent will be returned to her, she started crying. Through tears, she said, "Julia, your mother would be proud of you. Not only did you secure justice for her, but also for a whole generation that had been silenced." I also didn't overlook the employees who were caught in the storm. Aurora established a philosophy of complete openness, requiring an independent ethics board to review all strategic choices. Executive pay would be directly correlated with adherence to corporate ethics guidelines. Secrets concealed beneath a polished exterior would no longer exist here. In my new office, I set aside a private area for my mom. There, in the peaceful, naturally lit room, hung the original autumn dusk painting, unaltered and unedited. Charlotte Evans was written on a little plaque beneath it. The ignored mastermind. Her light now leads the way. Since doing so would allow them to bury my mother once more, I never removed the name Evans from the company's history. However, I would reinterpret that name. It is now a symbol of redemption rather than greed. 1 year later, WIPO certified Aurora as the first tech company with patent integrity. We had started 12 social innovation projects, rehabilitated the reputations of 36 innovators, and created the Charlotte Scholarship, a scholarship for deserving engineering students. My assistant gave me an envelope with no sender identified one late evening as I was ready to leave the office. There was a brief handwritten note inside. "Although you've won, there's still more to come." I put the note in a drawer after folding it. I was aware that my father had said nothing at all and that Lucas was still attempting to change the game from prison, but it didn't matter anymore. Because those who dared to speak the truth now held the power of justice instead of the powerful. And I, Julia Evans, the girl who was given a painting that had no value, now had the power to guide a generation into an unstealable future. George Evans, who was previously praised as a symbol of strength, creativity, and the perfect entrepreneur, was reduced to a case study in business school ethics seminars and a strike-through in court records 2 years after the Clarity Protocol was put into effect. Because of the seriousness of their offenses, my father and Lucas were sentenced to 35 years in jail and 20 years in prison, respectively, with no possibility of early release, at the conclusion of the federal trial. To make amends for the victims and innovators injured over the years, all personal belongings, including their residual Evans Corporation shares, were taken. And despite the media, politics, and change, Julia Evans, the daughter who was once given a picture that was thought to be worthless, never let the most crucial fact slip from my mind. All I was my mother's truth passed down to me. In Aurora Innovation's main foyer, the picture Autumn Dusk is currently displayed over a plain white stone plaque that says, "Where mute shapes once murmured the truth the world chose to ignore." As a representation of the ethical revolution in technology, it receives thousands of visits annually. It is no longer considered worthless. No one dismisses its abstract geometry or makes fun of its odd lines. It's a statement of the facts that power once attempted to conceal, a silent but potent cipher of awakening. I stood by myself in the internal gallery one Friday afternoon, gazing at the picture while the sunset's light came through the reinforced glass. The shapes that used to keep me up at night were perfectly illuminated by that light. They were now as familiar and reassuring as my mother's breath. Margaret, who was still the memorial's curator, walked next to me. Students frequently ask me, "Why did your mother hide everything in a painting?" "Julia, you know. Why not employ encryption, a hard disk, or some other cutting-edge technology?" With my gaze still focused on the exquisite brushstrokes, I grinned. Since she was aware. Art endures longer than anything else. Nobody thinks beauty is dangerous. And if someone doesn't understand a painting, they don't suppress it. Margaret gave a slow nod. The world might have been spared a lasting lie because of it. I went back to my office, where I still read letters for an hour every week. It's from regular folks, not investors. "I'm learning to draw like your mother, and I've seen kids send notes with drawings full of triangles and circles, engineering students, and even young inventors. Every letter is kept by me. Each scrawled letter serves as a reminder. Neither a press conference nor a sentence marked the conclusion of this voyage. Generation after generation, it is a living legacy that is transmitted every day. I include. Once, while incarcerated, Lucas wrote me. The final 2 sentences were an apology, whereas the first 3 were charges. I didn't respond. Hatred had left me, but I also refused to let toxicity come back. Certain systems are designed to fail indefinitely. My father, on the other hand, said nothing at all. However, I got it. That silence was his last resentment. Being known throughout history as the man who robbed the person he once loved of their dreams is the worst thing that can happen. The only IT firm in the United States to get simultaneous recognition for its contributions to innovation justice from the United Nations and WIPO was Aurora Innovations, 3 years later. We started a scheme to safeguard individual innovators' intellectual property, assisting little artists in avoiding being taken advantage of by big businesses. In order to recognize women whose scientific contributions had been overlooked but had the potential to transform society, I also instituted the Charlotte Evans Award. The first recipient was a New Mexico high school teacher who used biochar to create an inexpensive water filtering system. Before, no one had listened to her. The world was aware of her name now. I felt as though I was giving my mother the crown she never wore when I gave the prize, putting it in the hands of a deserving individual. Autumn darkness was softly falling behind me as I sat in my office on the last night of the 3rd year. Snow had started to fall outside. With a gentle whisper, I put my hand on the window. "Mom, I brought you home." No response. However, I was aware that she would say the same thing she usually did when I was a child if she were around. You don't have to believe the truth. All it requires is someone with the courage to live for it. And I did. And I'll keep doing it. For her. For the truth. And for the dreams that are unalienable. Julia's story serves as a potent reminder that, with courage and determination, the truth can be revealed, no matter how deeply it has been buried. In a society where wealth and power frequently trump justice, speaking up against wrongdoing requires not only wisdom but also unflinching resolve. Julia did more than only restore her mother's reputation. She used integrity to reframe a whole system. This story serves as a reminder that silence does not equate to justice in real life. It results from taking courageous action to uphold the truth. How do you feel about Julia's trip and the moral of her tale? Post your comments below. Remember to subscribe to the channel in order to continue reading heartwarming true stories that teach valuable lessons about life and family.